Last year, about this time of the summer, my partner Sarah sent a self-satisfied signal for me to take up my seat and to take down her say. She took a sip of her moringa tea, and I could just tell that she would make a boastful announcement of a bold achievement. My darling, to me, her words she spoke, words so curious that wonderment spurred. Beyond wonderment, behold my awakening sparked. Due to awakening soon forth some weaving spilled, to give weavings their whole word working inspired, through word working a story at once outspooled. So at once to you of what was I'll speak, for of what was your interest, or a wag I'm not, will surely spike. I'm Tom Yeager, the Bard of Montrose, and today's story is The Box. I'll tell it as I recall it, and if you think it meanders like the Mississippi or some river or another, tell yourself it's just one thing that leads to another. Sarah opened our discussion with her assertion. Well, I took the towels down off the windows today, and I imagine you didn't beat that as you spent your day. And I, having completed no accomplishment comparable, called out a compliment toward her competence. That's some great work, sweetheart, I said, and I never doubted you'd get around to it. And I added, but I want to bring word that I wonder whether it would be or wouldn't be wiser to wipe away that worn-out white wardrobe our windows wear in the witch of the winter, my dear, by, say, the end of April one year. Now, I know that needs explaining to this audience that doesn't know about the commune of activists and artists where I live and our 50 years of open to the public work at improving and enjoying our world. Mostly the enjoying part, according to some. For as my eyes mosey over this muster, I imagine not many members of this mighty amalgam ever made it to the magical music or the many meetings, the munchy meals, or miscellaneous merrymaking we'd mount month after month after month with my many minions at our Montrose mansionette. So for a minute or more, you might mind what I'll mention. Now, our longtime regular callers launched songs about our righteous quarters, our noble pile, I call it. But really, a few dump trucks to the landfill someday might soon haul it. You see, our oldest could see at least that it has accumulated 1.13 centuries of age. It has passed its prime, past the expiration date as the neighborhood all the rage. Long ago, I lost count of the times I'd overhear a regular say how bravely we all live with 1.13 centuries of decay. Indeed, it is shaky and it seems, so it seems. And in the winter months, as draws so near the dreariness, Sarah dreads and fears the draftiness. Now, for years, I sought a suitable solution to Sarah's silly shivers, to no avail. Until one day at a fancy estate sale, on a whim, I invested in a fine collection of raggedy old towels. And now each December, Sarah rolls those towels up on their long side and sets the towel sausages onto our sashes where there's cessation of their seals. And that weakens the wintry wind through our worn-out windows and works well for we. But of course, those winter towels must come down. So back to my hint that adjustment to time be found. Sarah's response? Silence. And that spoke with abundance. However, continuing our conference, she adopted a demeanor of dutiful demonstration that she did indeed endorse that day for development. My development? She said, while taking down those raggedy old towels that with full fanfare you conferred to me, my dear, for our anniversary, 1 year, I couldn't help but notice one towel that's not quite as raggedy old as your own bath towel. So I wondered if you wanted to swap them. Well, I gasped, began to sputter wildly, and a knot moved in my chest where a knot's not normally known to navigate, because I wasn't ready for that. So she let me stew. And Sarah walked away wondering, as I put my pate to pondering why I'd had such a visceral gut reaction to her very good suggestion. Well, a flood of memories swept over me, going all the way back. And the earliest of those memories was of me between toddler and tyke climbing out of a swimming pool into a cold breeze and being wrapped up by my grandmother with a very fine towel. And all the other memories were of our vacations and holidays down through the years, always at my grandmother's house, where I'd always find for my own use that very same towel. So two and two were tossed together to untangle what had taken place, and it hit me. Suddenly I realized that my bath towel has taken up the legacy of my grandmother's towel. You see, her towel and I grew up together, and my towel and I are growing old together. I didn't know till that moment that in the mystic maze of my mind, my bath towel over the past 30 years has ripened to represent and remind me of the comfort of the constancy of everything about grandmothers. Now think about this with me, will you please? During your so-called halcyon days of youth, your scooter days, your radio flyer days, your first bike and beyond days, days of the randomness, tumult, and adjustments of your chaotic childhood, was there ever anything that felt as steady and even, as honest and fair? Did anything shroud you with security and comfort quite like the constancy of a grandmother in her home? Well, not for me, and nor for many, I imagine. Eventually, though, and far too soon, we all realized that our grandmothers are not eternally constant. And when my grandmother turned 92, 3 grandchildren converged upon our home for the family visit. I was the first to arrive, and it was so good to get a hug from my grandmother. All was right with the world once more in the warm womb of her never-changing home. But as I prepared for an afternoon dip in her little stock tank pool, I had to say, Grandmother, I can't seem to find that towel that I always use when I swim here. And my grandmother had to say, that towel? Oh, Tommy, that towel got old and wore out and not much use to anyone anymore. So it's been tucked away in a box someplace. So find no further fuss about that towel. There are plenty of towels in the bathroom that would dry you well. Oh. Well, that evening my sister arrived, and while she was installing some sheets on a couch, I overheard her sing out, Grandmother, I can't seem to find that pillow I always use when I sleep here. Well, I saw my grandmother go in, and I heard her break the news. That pillow? Oh, child, that pillow got so old and wore out and not much use to anyone anymore. So it's been tucked away in a box someplace. So find no further fuss about that pillow. There are plenty of pillows in the den that'll sleep you well. Oh. Well, the next morning, our slumbers were cut short. We were rudely aroused at 1:30 the rooster by uncalled for clatter coming from the kitchen. My braggart brother had blown in, boasting and berating. Our lunch today could have been the best roast anyone ever lapped the lip over, but Grandmother, I can't seem to find that Dutch oven I always use when I cook here. That Dutch oven! Lord, that Dutch oven, that cast iron Dutch oven got old and wore out and not much use to anyone anymore. And it's been tucked away in a box someplace, so find no further fuss about that Dutch oven. There are plenty of pots in the pantry that'll cook for you well. Oh, ow! Well, after our so-so lunch, we drove Grandmother around to see several senior community apartments. But at the end of the day, she'd listened to nothing more about our notion to her moving. So at the end of the weekend, we left with nothing more than our words of her staying. A decade passed quickly. Grandmother passed quietly. So 3 grandchildren converged upon our home for the family divvy. We doled out keepsakes all day long, then discovered, hidden away in a corner of the garage, a box. Well, we approached that box eagerly, but respectfully, opened it carefully, and oh, so joyously, a flood of memories swept over me, going all the way back. For there was that towel I'd used all those years, resting on top of a pillow, nestled against the Dutch oven. But we buried that box and all its contents with my grandmother, all except a note she left inside, which said, "To my dear grandchildren, I know I got old and wore out and not much use to anyone anymore. So you almost tucked me away in a box of a place so you'd find no further fuss about your grandmother. There are plenty of grandmothers in apartments who could live in them well. But I wasn't ready for that. So you let me stay. And some of my best years have been these final quiet ones, in the comfort of the constancy of my own home, graced by your frequent visits. And I thank you dearly for that." The box.